let's bring up Naina's chart right now. Immediately, when I look at Naina's chart, can you see there's some really strong shapes there? Now, for those of you that watch this show quite regularly, you'll realize that actually there's not actually usually such a strong pattern that comes out in the astrology. So Naina's chart, based on her birthday, which I think is the 9th of December 1968, she was born with very, very striking planetary placements. So you see here, she's got Saturn and Vesta in a conjunction, really tight. The Sun and Mercury are very, very tight in the 9th house. And she's also got Ceres there. All three of them within like just slightly more than 2 degrees. That's a very tight placement. Then she's also got an exact placement, an exact conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus. Now, that doesn't come around too often, that placement, I have to say. She's also got the vertex here, which is an astronomical and it's a mathematical point that's calculated. She's also got the South Node in a conjunction with Uranus and Jupiter. Then her Venus at 29 degrees, that's an interesting degree right now because, and I'll share with you why. You might already be able to see it. Look, there's Pluto just there. So she's got her Venus at 29 degrees in the end of Capricorn, but it's making almost exact trine with vertex. It's making a really lovely trine with the descendant. It's making a really lovely trine with Pluto. So these blue lines, these long blue lines, these are known for talent and flow. And this, Naina's chart is a really, really good example of beautiful flow. She's got these lovely long trines between Saturn and Vesta and the Sun and Mercury and Ceres. It's very, very strong. And so she's obviously very, very talented, and she's got her North Node in an exact trine to her moon, which is very beautiful as well, very, very beneficial. And her moon is also in a lovely trine with the ascendant. And then she's got Chiron right on the ascendant. Now, Chiron, if you might remember, is known as our healing. He's our healing guy. He's the wounded healer. And so I would imagine that Anna's life has a really strong story of recovery, also a very strong story of possible trauma, actually, but also the need to heal, the need to heal the notion of the soul. It's her Chiron is right in the 12th house, which is the place of our unconscious mind, but it's also a place that's very, very intuitive, very psychic, very imaginative, but it's also a place where we can have all our memories locked up in. Now, she hasn't got much going on there, but this Chiron right on the ascendant, just in the 12th house is deeply sensitive. It's almost as if she feels the woes of the world. She can really, really feel it on her shoulders. Now, just looking at this instantly, I would imagine that the placements of this chart would actually be lending itself to Naina feeling quite sorry for herself, or quite sensitive at the moment, a little bit down, a bit in a funk. And the reason being is, first of all, Pluto's right over her Venus, which is a very, very strong thing, really, really strong. Wherever Pluto is, he energizes, but also aggravates. He's causing transformation, but it's usually not that smooth. It's been a long time since Pluto has actually impacted one part of her chart. The last time would have been was it 2004, 2005 when it went over her midheaven. So if I can remember when it actually went into the sign of Capricorn, I may have got those dates wrong. It's just off the top of my head. I think it was about 15 years ago. So no, I haven't got that right at all. But like Pluto right now is just here, and it hasn't impacted much of her chart for a long time. And so when that happens, it normally shows that there's a bit of a challenge going on. Now, Pluto has been slowly moving over this point and back over the last, I would say, definitely a year, maybe even a little bit longer. And so there's a change in the love relationship, which is taking a lot to get used to, and Pluto shows us what we try to control, what we try to hold on to, where we're trying to keep everything just as we want it. And it also shows where we just need to let go and allow things to be in their own right. And so it's almost like in her emotional life over the last 18 months or so, one of the things that Naina has had to learn is to kind of breathe through the changes, in particular changes with her loved ones, changes with her family, all these different changes she's having to breathe through and just allow. Allowing is very, very strong at the moment. Now, another thing that made me go, ooh, as I looked at this chart is, her Chiron, which is her wounded healer. Right now, she's also got Neptune coming up very, very close to her ascendant. Now, she's got Neptune and Saturn in the 12th house, and the 12th house often shows where we live away from home or where we might end our days. And also, it's a place where we often feel a little bit like going into a bit of a retreat. We want to lick our wounds a little bit. We're not as social. We might be a lot more introverted. And she's had Neptune going through this area for a very, very long time. So I don't suppose she's been introverted the whole of that time. Neptune moves very slowly, but he brings a lot of imagination, a lot more intuition, a lot more psychic energy into her inner world. And that's very, very good. It will have brought up lots of probably I don't want to say insecurities, but questions is probably the word I'd say, because wherever Neptune goes, it creates a bit of confusion. So it may well have caused a little bit of confusion as to Naina's memories or the things that she's been recalling about the past and how everything fits together. Neptune can also show where we have faith and where faith and spirituality come in. And if that's how it's related, that's really amazing. I mean, this period could also have represented Naina's if she's got a strong belief, a belief system, how it has turned around her internal thinking and shaped it. But when Neptune gets very close to the ascendant, it often gives us a bit of a wobble as to where we're going in life. And so seeing Pluto right here in the 10th house, dancing over Venus, showing that family relationships are in a kind of changing phase, not necessarily that they're coming apart, but they're just changing and everyone is evolving, and that is creating a new sensation. And then Neptune going over the ascendant, it's quite normal for us to really feel a little bit lost at times, and especially with Neptune going over Chiron as well, it creates a lot of sensitivity. And then the other thing that's also coming in, and that is we've got Chiron here transiting, going over her Saturn, which is almost saying where she's had certainty in her life before, it now also feels that the things that she's been certain about may also be a source of pain, a source of inquiry. Maybe inquiry would have been a better way of putting it. She's been inquiring inwardly about the structures she needs around her, and because she's now questioning these, it could bring up a little bit of pain or a bit of reaction, a bit of resistance, because it might run counter to what she believes. Now, her actual question, which has nothing to do with what I've been prattling on about, is actually about I'm curious about my personal growth, spirituality and creativity, vitality and motivation. I love writing. Will it pan out beyond a hobby? Well, here's where it's really great. See, I see that she's got a whole heap of emotional, psychic, spiritual, and intuitive material, like her rich inner world right now, and also the feeling that things have been changing and a little bit unstable, and that she's having to find a new way to be stable, and to find a new normal. I think all of that happening as it is in this very sort of intense time frame for her, I think this is creating a really great mix of material, for her to write about. Now, in astrology, writers usually have a very well-developed 9th house. The 9th house is about spirituality, philosophy, belief systems, religion, definitely about politics too. And it's also about publishing and law. Essentially, it's about the higher aspects of things we learn. So all of our main learning, like our school learning, takes place in this area here. The third house is what we know and what we're really familiar with. The ninth house up here is what's unfamiliar and what we have to learn outside of our unique experience. And so, you know, what I would see for Naina is that she's got either a really strong need to teach and share spiritual principles and what she's learned, share her journey. And what I'm not clear about is whether she's writing fiction or teaching. But the ninth house is very much about publishing. And so from that perspective, I really do think publishing would be really amazing for her, any kind of writing. I would say if she's able to somehow write in a therapeutic way, she will be combining what's going on for her right now and using it as material to shape a character or to help other people going through a similar thing. I mean, I know a little bit about her life changes over the last couple of years. I don't want to reveal it here. It's not my business to, but the particular change that she's going through right now is a change that lots of people are going through. And so I think she could offer very good spiritual observations or coaching based observations in a way that would be very helpful and very compelling and very gentle. She's got a very sort of like naturally gentle way of being, which is funny actually, because, you know, one thing I haven't spoken about, she's got her sun in the sign of Sagittarius. She's got an Aries ascendant and a Capricorn midheaven. I mean, it's so funny that I was saying she's got a sort of gentle energy. My experience of her is that of somebody who's very gentle and very gracious. And yet, you know, with an Aries ascendant and also a Capricorn midheaven, gentle is probably not the word that would first spring to mind. You might think thought-provoking, you might think challenging, kind of funny, kind of light and intense at the same time, you know, trying to get some kind of reaction. I mean, something else I would also like to point out is she's also got her angles all at 0 degrees in the cardinal signs. Now, the cardinal signs and 0 degrees is it. Funnily enough, I was actually recording something earlier and I looked at a chart with 0 degree cardinal sign angles. They don't come around too often. I mean, obviously it happens every day, but I rarely see them, put it that way, in people's charts. But the 0 degrees correspond to the spring equinox, the summer solstice, the autumn equinox, and the winter solstice. So I would say, in terms of Naina's chart, she might want to do a project that works from season to season. So she might want to use time as a way to thread her stories or her lessons together. They might take place over terms. They might be released in tune with the moon or in tune with the season changes. I would say the season changes are very important to her. Also, she's writing fiction. She might want to consider the whole life cycle of a journey, from the birthing, which is very much about this energy here, to the childhood, to the womanhood, or, you know, the sort of like fertility, and then, you know, like older age and the sort of decline. So you could actually follow the story of the chart even. But there is a sense of development, a sense of newness here, with especially her very first degree in her sign being 0 degrees in the sign of Aries. That corresponds with the very first degree of the zodiac. So, you know, there is definitely something that feels quite fated with Naina and how she works. I actually think that I actually think that this is a really good route for Naina. And what I would say is, in terms of exploring your talent, can you do it right now without needing to earn money? Because if you can do it without needing to earn money, then you're doing it for the sheer joy of it. And with your moon in the sign of Leo, there is a need to perform. There's a need to delight and use the senses and be quite dramatic. With Chiron on the ascendant, you could be telling stories. You could be even telling real life stories of transformation that would bring in the senses in quite a dramatic way. I think you could take your time and really enjoy it. And I think that would be very beneficial. I'm particularly energized when I see this Jupiter and Uranus conjunction in the sign of Libra. And also, 1 degree vertex in a conjunction with it, and also the South Node. It could also be that she's telling stories from the past or telling stories from past lives. The South Node is a sort of indication of all things from history. But the Jupiter and Uranus is almost like a new slant on everything, a new way to advance, a new way to have fun, to be joyous, to be outrageous. It's a new way to be creative. So I think all of these themes in her chart are really good, also including her lovely Venus in the 10th house. Now, Venus in the 10th house, I think, is an indication that Naina does very well. She's got a great way about her, and whatever she puts her mind to, she's pretty good at it. Her second house, to do with money and earnings, is ruled by the sign of Venus. It's ruled by Taurus, and the ruling planet is Venus, and it's in the 10th house. Right now, with Pluto on it, she could be using the transformative energy of Pluto to transform how she earns a living here. Now, you could, as I look at this chart, I could say, yes, she's going through some changes in terms of how her family is structured, with Pluto going right over it. It brings about a transformation that can be painful, but can also be very releasing, and very, if you yield to it, it can actually bring out a much greater possibility. And I always think with these outer planets, if you don't use the energy as it presents itself, for something you want to focus on, then that energy uses you. So I think if she was using her creative energy, Venus is basically about creation. If you were using your creative energy to build a new career for yourself, or a hobby that becomes something that you earn money from, then the sort of Pluto transformation that could be quite painful at times, that transformative element could be transforming her hobby into a career, rather than creating lots of change in terms of her family. So yeah, I actually think this is a very strong time for you. Saturn is your ruler of the career, and Saturn currently is here. So I would allow yourself a good, until Saturn goes into the sign of Aries. So you've got about 2 years. And when Saturn crosses into the first house, that's game on. That's like, let's take your proof of concept. Let's get it out there. Let's launch it. Let's show the world this new structure that you've created for yourself. And also that would coincide with the year when, or coming into the year of your second Saturn return, which it can be a very, very strong time. So yeah, I definitely think it's possible. And I'm very happy to give further advice if you need any, in terms of how you structure yourself. But I'm actually really excited. I mean, your whole chart to me looks like something that is all about creativity. Also, you've got Jupiter and Uranus going through your second house right now. And around the 21st of April, 2024, there's going to be a lovely conjunction just here in your second house. Now, I should also say, you've got Jupiter and Uranus in a conjunction in your own birth chart, and they're in the sign of Libra, which is ruled by Venus. Now, when Jupiter and Uranus come into a conjunction in April of next year, they will be in a trine to your Venus. So, and also the sign of Taurus is ruled by Venus. So I actually think April could also be a really good time to take a proof of concept. So you might write something, get it into its best shape. Obviously, I don't know how publishing works, but this is, just off the top of my head, like, get your idea out there to the right people for that time, so that by the time it fully launches, as Saturn is going over your ascendant, you've got a whole mechanism of support behind you. Or you might just be ready to launch something, you know, in April, and then your next follow-up when Saturn goes into the sign of Aries. But definitely that is a very strong time for you, April of next year.